And I am going to share my screen as well. Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining. We are here at the first 2022 Madison, Wisconsin Admin Trailblazer Community Group meeting. It might be too late to say Happy New Year, but I'm still going to say it, Happy New Year. We're really excited that you're able to make it today. If you don't know me, I'm Jen Bowen, one of your user group leaders. I am joined by Brian Kwong on the phone here, and Square's on as well. Square typically we do every other month with the Milwaukee group. You can connect with us here. Certainly, if you need stickers from Michelle, you can send her a private message with your address. She's the sticker queen, and we are also really excited to have her. I will introduce her in just a moment. If you've been on our calls before, you might already have heard our mission. We want to be here to succeed together. We come together to learn about new topics, features, and functionality of Salesforce. There's so much depth that comes with Salesforce, you can't possibly know it all. Although if you ask Brian, he might beg to differ. But again, we're here to share and succeed together. So please feel free to participate as we go on. And if you're interested in presenting, we would love to have you. We're always looking for speakers. So you can reach out to us if you have a topic, lesson learned that you'd like to share with the group. And yes, we think that thing that you built was really cool and we would like to see it. So please let us know if you're interested in speaking. We have lots of friends in the area in Wisconsin. You can find all of our different groupings or Trailblazer community groups on our site. So check that out. MVP office hours, I always have to give a shout out to them. Square, can you tell us what MVP office hours is again? Because I'm going to just botch it.
Sure, it's just an opportunity to get a bunch of people in a room and solve problems in a group. It's MVP office hours only because the MVPs host it, but you don't have to be an MVP to be part of it. You certainly don't have to be an MVP to answer questions. And honestly, Dale and Joy and I learn more from the attendees than we give out, I think, most times. So it's just a brainstorming session every 2 weeks, first and third Friday of the month.
First and third Friday. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you. Also, there's a Trailblazer group for it.
And
well.
I do want to add, Jen, I believe we have a new nonprofit group that got started closer to Milwaukee.
Thank you. I think I have them on our. I think I have their.
They're on our list
link.
in our chatter group. Yeah.
Yeah, I just didn't update this slide because why would I?
It's not like it's the new year.
It's right. Upcoming events. Cactus Force. Been seeing that a lot on the Twitters. The 20th, I think it's running. Looks like they have a remote opportunity. So they seem to be a little more dev and architect focused according to their website, but might be worth checking out. I'm sure you can learn lots there.
I'll be presenting.
Oh, good.
And they have an admin track, so it's called the configurator track.
Nice.
I'm going to out myself here. Steve Moe is also presenting on formulas, and his session is up against mine. So I will try not to take it personally if you go to Steve's instead of my session. But there's plenty of admin content in Cactus Force, and it is Thursday and Friday of this week, virtually as well as in Phoenix.
Thank you. I'm so glad that you're here to tell us more about that. What is your session on, Michelle?
Actually, it is a very specific use case for custom metadata. So it's kind of a extension of this session.
Nice.
Oddly enough.
How convenient.
We can talk a little bit about it today too.
Otherwise, I don't know if you call it Trailhead DX or Trailhead X, never know, is happening in April. And I want to give a shout out to Midwest Dreamin' is going to be happening in July, and that's up in Minneapolis. I haven't heard anything about them being remote. But I will post this deck along with what Michelle has to share, which has links to these events.
So I'm on the planning committee for Midwest too.
Oh my gosh.
Also, Trailhead DX has become Trailblazer DX. They've rebranded it. It's also over top of both Northeast Dreamin' and Texas Dreamin' if you're one of those weird people that goes to different regional Dreamin' events. But Midwest Dreamin', as of right now, we are planning on being live and in person in Minneapolis, and Witness Success, which is the Women in Tech conference, is actually co-located with that. So Midwest is Wednesday through Friday morning, and Witness is Friday afternoon and Saturday in the same location. I'm on
Awesome.
the planning committee for that too.
Overachiever. I'm just kidding. I love that you're so involved.
Crazy might be the term, but thanks. I'll take overachiever.
It's a lot. It's a lot. I mean, I struggle just doing the user group every other month, let alone be involved in so many. training
Overachiever and crazy are not mutually exclusive.
events.
Good point.
So I just wanted to open it up quick and ask if anyone has any job opportunities that they're aware of that have been posted. It's the new year celebrations. Anything else that you would like to share, feel free to unmute and share.
I still have a job opportunity open. We're still hiring for a Salesforce admin at MLG Capital. I'm really excited about it because we're making big investments in our tech ecosystem, super fast growing company, lots of opportunity. So if anyone has interest, let me know. Our office is in Brookfield. I'm here, but we're open to remote stuff too. So
Is this like a junior or a kind of a beginning admin position, or are you looking for experience?
probably a little bit more experience. The title Salesforce administrator, I view it probably a little bit more in like a senior type role.
So Cassie Subolowski just created a dev org with a bunch of targeted junior level positions. So if anybody finds job opportunities that are more of that entry junior level, definitely reach out to her and you can get that posted on that site too.
Cool. Thanks for letting me know. I'll drop a link here in the chat if anyone's interested.
Thanks, and feel
But
free
thanks,
to
everyone.
post it on our success community or the Trailblazer community as well. It's always for those that weren't able to make it today. If it's something they're interested in, they'll find it there. And thank you for mentioning Cassie's link. I was just looking at hers the other day and was really impressed. I think she had over 100 different roles, so that was pretty cool.
She's done a lot with it.
So you might be wondering who this lady is speaking on the call. Michelle Hansen, welcome. Thank you so much again for joining us today. You can follow her on Twitter. She's got a million certifications, I think 18, is that right? 18?
Yeah, as of last month.
As of last month, which is amazing, and is going to be talking to us about custom metadata types for admins. So I am going to pass this over to her. I think you should probably have rights to present. Let me stop sharing my screen. Maybe stop share, and I will hand it over to you, Michelle.
All right, well, we're gonna fail at this whole whatever here. Come on. There we go. Yay. Well, hello, everybody. Good afternoon. So wanted to chat with y'all about custom metadata. When Brian reached out and said, does anybody want to present to a user group? I'm like, so I like this topic. It's super fun because I didn't know anything about it and then I learned about it. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, this is my favorite thing. So a little bit about me. I work for 7 Summits, which is a consulting company, which got bought by IBM. So I guess technically I work for IBM now. But as Jen mentioned, picked up a few certifications this last year. So I'm now at 18, which is still weird. I am a 3-time ranger. So clearly I should spend more time on Trailhead. But I also co-lead the Cedar Rapids user group. I co-host a cool event that happens pretty much every other week called Automation Hour, where we invite community members to come and present something cool that they have built with some form of automation in Salesforce, whether that's, workflow rules, process builder, flow, Apex, unofficial stuff. Just, I had a problem, here's how I solved it. Maybe it'll help you with a problem that you've got too, essentially. I've joined the planning committee for both Midwest Dreaming and Witness Success this past year. I think this is how I deal with COVID, is just fill up every single second of breathing time I have while I'm awake, maybe some while I'm sleeping too. But otherwise, I absolutely love giving back to the community, talking with other people. So anybody who would like to reach out to me, for sure, I invite you to. I'm much more active on Twitter than anywhere else, but if you want to send me a LinkedIn request, just let me know where we met, essentially. And also I threw in a link to the portfolio site that I've been building based on a Trailhead project, just because it's kind of like my own personal website now that I can kind of add things to. And I think it's a really cool thing for anyone who's working on their career to put together and be able to showcase some of the cool, fun things that they can and have done with Salesforce. So a quick overview of what we're going to do today. I want this to be interactive, so we're going to take a risk and I'm going to do some live build. But we're going to talk a little bit about what custom metadata is. And then we'll go through a sample use case, and we're actually going to build it out and demo it together so you can all kind of get your hands dirty along with me. And then we will talk through some additional admin use cases, because never is it a good thing to say, hey, this is the only way to do something or the only way to use something. So I want to just kind of help get your brains, you know, kind of in that creative mindset of what else could I use custom metadata for? Okay, so first off, what is custom metadata? Well, custom metadata is pretty much something that has usually been considered a developer tool. That could not be farther from the truth. So it is a way that you can actually build records that are specifically used not to hold data, so not like a contact or an account or an opportunity, but a way to build records that you need to be able to configure how your Salesforce org or your Salesforce app actually works. So custom metadata, by definition, is actually metadata, which means it is deployable from a sandbox through any of the traditional deployment methods. So change sets, if that's what you got, packages, metadata, APIs, all that stuff, you can totally move it from org to org. And it means when you make a sandbox from production, your custom metadata comes with it. And that's pretty cool, especially when we think about it in relation to custom settings, because custom settings are technically data. So you have to rebuild those every time you spin up a new org, or if you want to move it from a sandbox up to production, for example. It's pretty flexible. You can use it in a lot of different places, and it makes a lot of sense for how you can use it to kind of build Legos and things in terms of formula fields, validation rules, and of course, you know, Flow, Apex, Process Builder can also use it, but since Process Builder is going away, we don't really talk about that anymore. If anybody is familiar with custom settings, it is a more flexible alternative to using custom settings. It's kind of like I used to call Flow Process Builder's hotter older cousin. It's kind of the same thing with custom metadata and custom settings. It's the cooler older brother of custom settings. You can do much more with it, and it's got some more flexibility. And honestly, custom metadata is just as easy as building a custom object. If you have built one in your org, you can build and use custom metadata without any problem. So really, it becomes an admin superpower. So the sky is really the limit of what you can do with custom metadata once you sort of figure it out. Okay, so I'm going to break there to see if anybody has any questions. I know most people are off camera, but if anybody feels like chiming into the chat, have you used custom settings or anything like that before? Or has anybody used custom metadata in their own orgs? And are there any questions so far about what custom metadata is?
I'll just say yes. But I don't think I count anymore.
I think Brian counts.
So I know Squire has.
Oh, I love it. In fact, I just had a conversation. We have a very young group of admins that just joined at Baird. I should say just. And the number of times I've said, you need to get on this trail and understand custom metadata because it needs to be your go-to a lot of times. I've said it a dozen times in the last 6 months. So yeah, big fan.
Yep. So I totally forgot to put these in the presentation, and I will do so before I send it to Jen to send out, but I will include a list of resources for additional learning on custom metadata, including the Trailhead Trail on it. But I'll be honest, I took that trail, got the badge, posted on Twitter that I got the badge, and I was still completely lost. So it was actually Jen Lee who reached out. Cheryl Feldman had started the conversation around custom metadata in the Twitter group I was on. And so I kind of just popped my head in there and I'm like, okay, so I did the custom metadata stuff and I'm still lost. And Jen's like, I got this, I can help you. She actually sat down with me. We got on a Zoom call and I said, here's what I'm trying to do. And I want to use custom metadata for it, but I don't get it. And so she actually sat down with me and in a sandbox, we built it out. And it was really cool. And by the end of it, I'm like, oh, I get it. And so ever since then, here we are. So awesome. Seeing some of the comments in chat, I think that's awesome. Monitoring triggers in one of your projects. It's a really cool use case for it. So for today, we're going to go through a sample use case and then we're going to dive in and we're actually going to build this. Okay, so our use case is we are going to use this as a way to avoid hard coding IDs. I don't know if anyone has seen Jen Lee's blog, but I love it because it's got Wonder Woman on the front of it going, oh, hell no. I did not just see you do that. But we all know that hard coding IDs is a bad idea in Salesforce. One of the main reasons being that when you move from org to org, even from sandbox to sandbox sometimes, the org doesn't carry over that ID. So the ID of ABC Inc. record account is not the same in production as it will be in sandbox. Sometimes it is, but you can't guarantee that. So anyway.
So where would I be hard coding IDs for those that might be new?
Where would we be hard coding IDs?
Sure.
Nowhere.
Where might one be tempted to do that? Let me put it that way.
One might be tempted to do this in a number of places. Some of the things I have seen is if you have a process that you're using Process Builder for and you need a record type ID, that's the only thing that you can get to on that record is the record type ID. So you just say, oh, well, it's the record type ID for an account record. That's a business, right? Or it might be, I need, there you go, a default entitlement on a case. Or I've often seen, well, I need this one user to be exempt from a validation rule. So I'm just going to throw their user ID in the validation rule and say, if it's this person, just don't. Yeah, Squire, thank you for that virtual hand slap. Yeah, this is not a good thing. Not only because those IDs change, but also if you're hard coding in user IDs, what happens when that user leaves? What happens when that user changes jobs and no longer needs to be exempt from that particular validation rule? How on earth are you going to go back through your org and find every single place that you stuck that user ID in or whatever ID it was that you now have to go back in and change because someone's changed jobs, moved on, what have you. Oh yeah, content document IDs in automation. That would be another one. So we are actually going to take this as our use case today. So what we want to do is in my org, I've built out two different account record types, one for businesses and one for individuals or residential accounts, essentially. So is it a business or a person? I'm not using person accounts. I don't even want to talk about it. Just So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we have a website for every business account in our org. Now, I'm not going to expect a person to have a personal website, so it doesn't make sense for me to require that on that record type. So because of that, I can't make it a required field. Now, you can do some cool stuff with dynamic forms. How many of you have actually used dynamic forms? I see Jen has, Squire has, Brian. So I love dynamic forms because they give you the ability to hack up your page layout. And instead of just having to have a full page layout, awesome, Lexi says thumbs up. I'm assuming that means you have. So you can put different fields on the page in different places and, mini sections and stuff without having to have just this whole gargantuan page layout of sorts. You can tab stuff out and organize it better. And you can actually set different fields to be either conditionally visible or conditionally required or read-only based on different criteria. So in theory, that might be an option here, except dynamic forms isn't available on standard objects, and the account is a standard object. So we can't use that. So in this case, it makes sense in my head, at least, to be able to do this with a validation rule. But I need this validation rule to apply specifically to just that business account record type. Now, most of the time we say, okay, that's fine. I'm just going to go throw in the record type ID, and we would hard code that in. And as we all know, Squire would come by and slap all of us on the hand. So instead, what we are going to do is we are going to use custom metadata to basically build in a record that we can retrieve to map the name, which is less likely to change and is at least normal English for people to understand and read, to that ID value. Okay. So we'll hop into my dev org here. And so I have gone into setup, and from setup, I have just come in and typed in custom, because I'd search for literally everything. And I've got custom metadata types down here. So you can see I've done a few different things on Trailhead in this org. So I've got a few different types of custom metadata. So we are going to create a new custom metadata type. Basically, this is the same as me creating a custom object. Yeah, custom object. So I'm just going to call this name to ID mapping. I like giving things names that make sense in my head. So we'll do the plural, does not start with a vowel. And in terms of visibility, I want it to be visible in setup. I'm not going to be putting this freely in any Apex code or anything, because I'm definitely not a developer at this point. So I just leave this top one as my radio button here. So for description, basically, it's just going to hold a mapping from the name of some record to the ID of that record, so I can use it somewhere in my org, wherever that happens to be. So great, we've created our custom metadata object. And now I can go and create my custom fields. So we already have kind of this label and this record name, which is essentially the developer name or the API name. So really, I'm only going to create one field here. And so I'm going to create one custom field. We're going to make it two, actually. And I'll show you why here in a second. Because how many record IDs does a record have? Brian says two, correct. And so there are different places in the org where every once in a while you need to use one versus the other, either the 15-digit, which is case insensitive, or the 18-digit, which is case sensitive and has those three extras characters at the end. So I'm actually going to build fields for both. So we're going to have a 15-digit ID. And the way I'm going to do this is I'm just going to put in the length as 15. And I'm going to make this required every time I create. Could absolutely do that. Brian in chat said, use left ID 15 when you need the 15. So probably would have been a better way to do this, but I'm just going to go ahead with it the way I've got it now. So I've got the 15 and I'm going to do the 18-digit ID. And I'm going to actually cap these at the 15 and 18 so that when I copy, if I get anything extra, it won't come with it. So, okay, now I've basically created my custom metadata object, my custom metadata custom field. And so now I'm ready to create my custom metadata record. So if we were talking in, context of an object, I've just created contact. Now I'm going to start creating contact records, but we're doing this with custom metadata. So manage name to ID mappings is how we're going to do this. But first I need to know what I'm actually going to put in there. So I'm going to open Object Manager in a separate tab so I can actually go find my ID for my account record types. So we'll go over here We'll grab my business account. I just realized I'm 100% in the wrong org. How many of you guys have done that?
Every time.
Daily?
All right, well, we are going to add a new account record type here because clearly I'm not in the org where I built this. So we are going to make this one individual. This is what I get for having way too many dev orgs tied to my tail.
And I was just thinking, I was like, oh, she changed the background color so she knew which org she was in.
Yes, I have done that a lot. Still doesn't seem to help me keep the org straight. But I'll tell you what, it was really good for Sandbox versus Prod because I had one of them in like the standard Salesforce blue, the other one was bright green, and it actually had a sandbox picture in the background. I never screwed that up, at least. So, all right, we're going to go into my business account record type here. And I'm going to come up here and I'm going to grab the ID out of the URL. So just do a quick copy. And I'm going to come back over to my custom metadata. And I'm going to create my first record of my name to ID mapping. So my label is going to be business account record. And then as I paste this in, you can see this truncates it to 15 characters and that one gets the full 18 because I set those links up. So literally I'm just gonna, sit here and save it. Okay, so now I've got a custom metadata type. With that, I'm gonna jump back over to my account now and we are going to work on our validation rule. So let's see, and here's just another tip or trick that I generally use with validation rules. I give every single one of them a code that corresponds to the object that it's an actual validation rule on. I kept running into this issue where I'd get cross object validation rules and I would get lost trying to troubleshoot. So I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. I found this online somewhere and they're like, every object validation rule gets some sort of a code. And then if you put it in both the rule name and the error message, when someone says, hey, I ran into a problem, you can say, what's your error message? And very quickly go and troubleshoot it. And this is something that I ran into a ton on a custom object that was a child of an opportunity. And I was literally 3 objects away from the account at that point. And couldn't figure out what validation rule they were triggering because I was looking on the wrong object. And I was trying to match the error message and I couldn't find it. So this cut all that nonsense out. And it's great because everybody starts to, figure out I need this code. So they'll be like, hey, I hit this code, this error, here's the code for it. So, yep. So something like this, account 001, because you can have up to 100. So require URL business on the business account type. So I'm going to skip descriptions for time. Please fill out your descriptions. So basically what I want is I want to go find my URL field or my website field here. And I'm going to wrap this in an is blank. So that's my first piece of my criteria. And I also want to know my record type. Brian Kwong, you would not. Cannot believe you would do that. Fine. I filled out the description. There you go. Okay, so now I'm going to go grab my record type. Now, if I scroll through all of this stuff, now they have since given me the ability to get from my record type over to the record type object. And now I could actually grab record type name. But before this was an option, you wouldn't be able to do this. You would have to just go find record type around here. So we would have the record type ID. Okay. So normally what we would do is we would then hard code something like this in here. We don't want to do this. This is absolutely terrible. So instead, I'm going to comment this out. By the way, if you did not know, you can actually comment out stuff in these fields, assuming you do it in the right order, which I did not. And it turns brown if you have the Salesforce Enhanced Formula Editor. So you can kind of tell here that that turned brown. That's now commented out. If I've got / asterisk and then asterisk / on the end, this no longer counts. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to take that record type ID field. So let me just copy this here. And now what we're going to do instead is we are going to look up our custom metadata type. So I'm going to go down here to my custom metadata. I'm going to find my name to ID mapping. The only one I have is my business account record type. And I'm going to grab the 18-digit ID. And so I'm going to insert that instead. And it's this huge long thing because I make super long names for things because that makes sense in my head. But basically what we're going to do here is I'm going to check that the website is blank. And if the record type ID is equal to the 18-digit of that particular account record type, then this should trigger my validation rule. And I put in an extra and here. So this is why we always check our syntax. Okay, so now error is found. So I'll put my validation rule. So I'm going to put that and I'm going to put it next to the website field because that's where I like to put it, assuming I click on the right things. Otherwise, if you put it at the top of the page, you have to scroll through the whole page to kind of figure out where exactly this goes. All right. So now I have saved my validation rule. It is active because that's the other part that I always screw up is forgetting to activate things because why would I do something like that? And so now let's go jump into our org and find ourselves an account. Okay, so I've got an account for Cloud Cooks here. And so I'm going to find their website field. It is empty, and I'm going to make sure that I have their record type set correctly. Okay, so the account record type is a business account. So if I try and edit this and say, okay, they are no longer a prospect, instead they are now a direct customer. Well, we're going to build this live and it's going to not trigger my validation rule and make me look like an idiot because that's how we do this. Okay.
Did you set the custom metadata type field? Because I don't remember if you set that. Put the 18-digit into.
Let's double check. Yep, it's right
Okay,
there.
it is there. Okay, cool.
Have that there. Sarah, I appreciate you. She's like, I'm usually more nervous when things do work right the first time. Okay, so
You're
let's.
missing a website?
Huh?
Are you missing the website still? Or is it filled in on your account sample?
I'm pretty sure it was empty, but we'll just make sure. What are you doing? Stop that. And we're going to get rid of my comments here just to make sure that that wasn't screwing anything up. Okay, so is blank website field and the record type ID equals this. All right, let's go back to Cloud Cooks. So that is empty. Let's just double check this. Testing.
Did you actually save it? Save the validation rule?
Pretty sure I had. All right, so we've got an active validation rule here. It's active. It's on account. Interesting.
I'll be the first one to tell you that I'm terrible with validation rules. I know Scott's on the call and he knows that I admit that often. Is it supposed to be an or instead of an and? Because that always trips me up with validation rules.
I need both of them to be true. So if I were to change this
Okay.
to a different record type, so on individual, I should be able to save this without a website. And it will be perfectly happy because I would not expect an individual to have a website. So I want both of those things to evaluate to true. So if we switch this back over to a business account. All right, so why?
Are you sure it's the right ID?
We're gonna double check that next. So let's see here. I have record types for my account. And so this is one thing I will say, I generally will test using hard-coded values. I just won't leave them in there. So if I copy the record type ID, so like I said, if I want this to not be the custom metadata, instead I can comment that part out so it doesn't count anymore. And I want the record type ID to be, I wonder, shouldn't need to put it in quotes. Okay, so I'm using the 18-digit version of the ID. That might be the other thing here. So now I have this checking to make sure that my record type ID is equal to this, which we double checked is the business account ID here. Okay, so if I change my ticker symbol here, and my record type ID is a business account. All right, it's not liking the ID, that's for sure. Is this where you have to use a 15-digit?
Try. It's weird because record type ID needs to be 18-digit if you're using it in automation, but it.
All right, well, we're gonna try the 15-digit and see if it likes that better. Haha, that's it. So this is that weird spot where you have to use the 15-digit instead of the 18-digit, which is why I put both on that custom metadata record. And it always trips me up when you have to use which one. So now this is pretty simple for me to go fix. I know that it works. I know that the record type ID is the right one, but I grabbed the wrong field on our custom metadata object record instead. So we'll just kill all that.
Feel like while you're doing that, I feel like I read that the 1518 has to do with how and when it triggers. So like the validation rule is actually being experienced inside the UI, and the UI sees it as a 15, but like in process builder and automation, it's pulling the 18 because it's programmatic. I think there's a better way to describe that, but I think that's why you go one way or the other, right? Like if you're in the UI, you don't even see the 18 in the URL, or sorry, well you do, but you don't see it in the like in reports and stuff. So I think that's the switch is probably the best way to look at it.
If that's the secret sauce, I absolutely love you for sharing it with the rest of
I'm
us.
trying to find the article while you were doing that. I was like, I know I read this, but I can't find it. If I do, I'll post it.
Yeah, because one of the other tricks that I have is the first thing I build on every object, 2 fields. Number 1 is the 18-digit ID field, because if I need to do any sort of data exporting, modification, whatever, I want to make sure I've got that 18-digit, not just the 15 that you get if you pull a report. And I always still build the power of 1. So I know they've done a lot of great things with row level formulas and things in reporting, but every once in a while, there's still something I need that does not work. So the power of 1 is the other field I always build. All
If I
right.
ask a really quick question just to finish that sentence.
Yeah.
So when you do that, what do you call, so first of all, you use what, the case safe ID formula to generate the 18. What do you call the field?
18-digit ID.
Oh, you do. And then who knows that it's there?
I don't put it on anything, so generally just the admins would know it was there.
And you use FLS as well, or do you just not put it on the layout?
I just don't put it on the layout. So
All right.
honestly, we were a very lax organization, and a lot of people had access to a lot of things, but otherwise I would absolutely say your FLS could be locked down to any sort of integration or security users and any Salesforce admin profile.
Cool. Thanks.
I just want to say that using the 18-digit ID and just calling it very plainly confused me sometimes between what object am I looking at if I'm pulling a report or doing something. It gets really confusing. Like, okay, which 18-digit ID is this? So in our org, we do the name of the object and then we call it ID 18. And that's it. And then that way it's very clear if you're pulling something, which ID 18 do you have if you don't know the prefixes.
So like you call it like account ID 18, contact
Yeah.
ID 18. I like
Yeah.
that. I like
Yeah.
that a lot.
Yep. I generally prefix the API name for those fields with whatever object I'm on. So like if I
Nice.
build a custom object or a custom field on the contact object, it'll be CONT, or account would be ACCT, something like that. But once I started doing that, I also started realizing that in so many places, it doesn't give me the API name. It still gives me the label. And so that just bit me in the butt anyway. And then CPU came along and just completely destroyed that with their twin fields. So yeah, I like your solution a lot better, for sure.
Sorry, we got sidetracked, but it's good. It's good tips. I see a lot of people saying in the chat too how they do their naming convention, and I like those. I like that one, Teresa, for export ID. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I actually kind of like putting it on the layout, but putting it in system info.
Yeah.
So. All right, so now that we have figured out why exactly this did not work, I've updated it to be that 15-digit ID. So let's go back to Cloud Cooks. We'll cancel this and we'll try changing something else on this account again. And again, we're still getting that error message that I have to have a valid website. So as long as I put something in here, it'll work great. We go look for a different account in here. We'll just go to this one here and we will make sure that we put it to an individual. And we'll change this to Michelle's account. Now this would not require me to have a website because it's an individual. So it goes ahead and lets the save go through Sam's website. So. But that's pretty much a quick and easy use case on how you can do something like that. So in a validation rule, you can also do the same thing in a formula field. But anything like that where you'd be tempted to hard code an ID, instead you can go look up that custom metadata. And it's just basically going and finding the specific metadata record that you need for your specific use case. So any other questions? And this chat is phenomenal. You guys are great.
Hey, Michelle, I have some questions. So now you've built this in a sandbox. What happens when you move this to production? Do I have to go update my, just go through my custom metadata types to update them, or does it automatically update since we linked it to the record type ID? How does that work?
No, so that is the one thing that you do have to do once you move this. You will want to go through and update the 15 and 18-digit fields for the values that are in production. I think what I heard is that if you have a full sandbox, the IDs do stay the same. But if you create, and that's if it's copied from production. So if you create a new record that is even an exact copy of a record in production, but you built it from scratch in your sandbox, the ID is probably going to be different. And I don't know if partials follow the same rule of data copied over has the same ID. Partial sandboxes
They do.
They do. Partials do too. Yeah.
Okay.
So if I'm understanding correctly, if you built like we did today, the record type in your sandbox and you don't have it in production, you're going to have to update this data.
Correct. So if it existed in production first, it should translate over just fine. But if you did not, then you'll run into this potential issue.
So could you show us, I know live on the fly, you love that. I'm not sure, can you create a can you create a change set in this org? I don't think you can because it's not really a sandbox, is it?
Yeah, no, I can't because this is a dev org for sure. But essentially what you would do is this will go into a change set just like anything else. As a matter of fact, I have an old sandbox I can't get into. So
I think you can build the change that you just can't connect it to deploy it, right?
Maybe.
I have no idea.
Let's find out.
But the reason why I mentioned it is because I've always heard people say,
Oh.
hey, if you have a custom metadata type, you can just deploy it in your change set. And I was like, I don't know how these people are doing this because it never worked for me. And I just learned the other day how to actually deploy it with your change set. So I would love to show people that because that was always something that I never understood. Look, you can. That's neat.
So this is actually a sandbox.
Oh, okay.
So, but I know I have some sandbox custom metadata in here. So I'm just going to create a custom metadata change set. And so when I go in here to add my change set components, the first thing I'm going to do instead of an app is I am going to go and I'm going to look for a custom metadata type. So I have my name to ID mapping in the sandbox. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab this. And this is pretty much the same as grabbing a custom object. So I'm going to have add to change set, and then I need to add more. Because once I've added the custom metadata type, the object, now I need to go and add all the fields. So now I'm going to go grab all of my custom fields. And so they are still custom fields. We'll see whether or not this errors out on me today because I have 8 million fields in this org, I swear. So, and what I wanted is my number fields. So the easy way to do this for me is to just do a search. Yeah, you're gonna come non-responsive. Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate you. See if we can get this to behave. So it's a 3-part. You add the custom metadata type. And so at this point, I'm just going to say, just show me what you got. And it's still going to crash my page. That's super exciting.
Just can't win today.
Apparently not with this. So then the other thing that you're going to do, and this is the not so intuitive part, so I want to make sure this is the part that we definitely show, is you also have to move the records. So like if you created a bunch of contacts in a sandbox, you would have to do like a data extract and then a data load to get them into your production org. So the cool thing is you don't have to do a data export and a data load with custom metadata records. Are you really going to be this bad today? Like for real?
Michelle, while you're clicking, I want to reiterate what you just said, because I think it's the hidden gem of custom metadata. Like when you kicked off, and I think a lot of new admins experience this too, it's like it just feels like a object, a custom object. Why would I do this? Why wouldn't I just create an object and make it accessible to the whole world? And the idea that you can deploy the data that's tied to the object is the extension that standard objects don't allow you to do with a change set, and allows you to ensure that box to box to box, all those configuration records, those data records are moving. That and in theory, you would have to do some sort of process builder to pull in the data into the record to build a permission or like a validation rule versus being able to literally query on the fly through Formula Builder. Those two things are so invaluable, and I think get glossed over in the documentation and demonstrations that it's just built for us, and so don't lose track of it.
Yep. So we're going to pretend that I added all the custom fields, the whole 2 that I added, the 18-digit and the 15-digit. But then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my name to ID mapping, and it's an actual like object that you can go in here and grab. And so now I actually have several different metadata types here, records that I've created in the sandbox. So I can add these to my change set instead. So this is the actual like custom object data, but it's a custom metadata object data. And so I'm going to add those to that change set too. And so this is where you have the object, the fields, pretend they exist, and all of the records. And to Squire's point, like the big thing about this is like, if you had to do this, you could totally do this in a custom object, but number one, you're sucking up a custom object in your org for something that's configuration based. And then you have to use all of your field level security to just be like, you can't touch this, but you can touch this, but oh wait, I need you to be able to touch this so you can use it so that I can do the automation that requires it. This doesn't require all that. It's metadata in your org. It doesn't have all that complexity to it. And I'm moving all of those records with a change set, not having to do a data load, not having to have some sort of an external ID field to make sure that if I make updates to that record in Sandbox that I want to move to production, I know that there's some sort of ID, because they might not be the same record ID when it's data records. And this doesn't cost you in any of your transactions like a get. I don't have to go look up an object and query the database and cost myself that call that says, go find this information for me in a custom object somewhere. It's just, hey, I need you to go grab some metadata. And it's like, okay, that's fine. I can totally do that. Doesn't cost you anything. So those are some of the big deals there. But essentially, this is how you build the new object, the new fields, and all of the new records or the updated records you can move from Sandbox to prod with a change set.
You also might want to include your page layout in your change set.
Why would I do something like that? That would be so smart.
Yeah, page layouts and custom metadata types used to be a little different. I don't know if they are better now. I think that they are, or they actually have a page layout on the page where you can edit it.
Yes.
You used to not be able to do that in Lightning.
So the one thing that I will say, and I was going to say this, but we'll kind of segue into this as we're talking through this, and yay for finding component dependencies, because this gave me my fields without crashing it again. So now I can actually add all the stuff that I actually need, which is the page layout, the custom fields. I could also build list views on my custom metadata, which I've done before, to even segment out the pieces of custom metadata that I'm looking for. It really is not a first class object. It is not as well treated by Salesforce as, let's say, accounts and opportunities. So one of the things that annoys the ever loving heck out of me is every time you go to create a new custom object record, it doesn't kick you back to the list view. So you have to actually go and click on setup and go back. So like, I can edit this, I can delete it, or I can clone it. But if I want to go back to my list view, I can't get there from here. So I have to go back to click on custom metadata types over here in the menu, and then find the one I actually want, and then go back to manage records to get to my list view. So you also cannot create these in bulk without using code. If you've got VS Code or Salesforce CLI or something that's codery, above my head for sure. You can't do it in bulk. So just be prepared if you're going to use some of the other use cases that we'll talk about here in a second. This could be a little bit of a pain in the butt, and it might take a while. It's not quite as nice as being able to do a data load with a custom object. So there are some limitations, but overall, I really think that the benefits outweigh some of those, let's call them annoyances. So. Okay, so some additional admin use cases. A friend of mine actually has a flow that she uses to map a country to a specific region. So if the country is the US, Canada, or Mexico, it maps to the North America region. If it's Bolivia, or it's Chile or Argentina, it maps to South America. You know, France, Great Britain, gets mapped to EMEA or Europe, whatever those regions are, because there's not a very specific kind of thing for that. I mean, we have, you know, the pick lists for, you know, country and things like that. But you don't have something country to map to a region, or if you have a zip code and you need to map it to a county, or something like that, you can actually build yourself an object that creates that mapping. And so if my zip code is 63390, my county becomes Warren. So something like that. We've also used this to, you can assign a counter and opportunity team based on multiple criteria. So you could probably do this to assign ownership to any number of records based on more criteria than what your assignment rules will let you do. Also, we did something where we started a custom object for all of our admin requests. And so we kept giving it a t-shirt size. And somebody would ask, well, what does that mean in terms of hours? And so instead of us having to sit there and think about it every single time, I built a custom metadata object that basically said, if it's a t-shirt size of extra small, that's 0 to 2. If I say the t-shirt size is extra large, that's somewhere between 30 and 40. And so I was able to do that instead of having to fill that field in every time. I basically made a formula field that said, if I put in a t-shirt size of extra large, fill in the number of estimated hours field with whatever that maps to in my custom metadata. Another thing that we did is we had a bunch of competitors listed for different products on our account. So who is your current BI tool, your business intelligence tool? Are you using Tableau CRM, one of the other ones that are out there? And what we wanted to do is we actually wanted to change the way we did this from being pick list values on an account record to being a set of related vendors, an object. And so while we were in transition, what I did is I was still working with the pick list, and I was in the process of having that create those related records. So I actually mapped the pick list value on my account field to the ID of the account for that competitor, and used that to automatically create that competing vendor record in that related list. So that was definitely one of the hairier projects I work on, but it was kind of cool to be able to do that and say, okay, so anytime this pick list gets updated, go find wherever this mapping is, and I need you to create a competitor record on this related list that is equal to this particular lookup field for the account. So then we could do some kind of cool analytics and stuff about market size and whatnot. But so that's just a few more of the use cases. I think one that they have on Trailhead is being able to actually set a support tier and what sort of support they're entitled to with that support tier. And the cool thing is that you can actually link multiple custom metadata records together. And I used that actually in a kind of crazy pseudo CPQ. We had this issue where Sales Cloud, which does quantity times list price, was not good enough for what we needed for pricing, but we didn't need to get all the way to CPQ. So I built a pricing calculator using custom metadata. And so I'd be able to say, okay, I have all of these different types of pricing structures. And then based on which type of pricing structure I need, go look up the product that falls under that to pull in whatever pricing data I needed. So you can actually link them together with a lookup or a relationship field, which you also can't do with custom settings. So, but with that, I think I might be slightly over, so I apologize. I seriously don't know how to stop talking. I'm sorry. I will open it up for any questions, comments. This chat has been amazing. You guys are all awesome. So thank you again for letting me be here today. And please feel free to get in touch. If anybody has questions, wants to chat more. If you want stickers, I will send you stickers. I have a few. So I need a snail mail address to get them to you.
Thanks, Michelle. One of the use cases I had with custom metadata types recently, and Square, I'd love you to share yours too, but I had a particular situation where I had a specific user that needed to receive a task, essentially, and an email alert, honestly. And when an account record met a certain set of criteria, this task and email needed to go to this specific person. So instead of hard coding in my flow the person's email address and name, I put it in a custom metadata type. And it was great because they recently changed who that person was. And instead of me going into my flow to edit, I just went to my custom metadata type, made the change, and boom, going forward, it was the right person. So it was a neat way to use custom metadata types. Easy, very easy use case for it.
Yeah, that's actually what I did that I'm presenting on Thursday is between custom metadata types and flow, I use it to build record templates. So we have some special requirements when we go to sell a set of software at my old company. And so if you bought a specific product, there would be these requirements that we needed you to fill out additional information on to make sure that we could support it. Well, there was things like a subject matter expert, and there were links to documents that would have to be filled out for questionnaires and things. And as you can imagine, this stuff would change all the time. And what I didn't want to do is have 25 versions of my flow, because Sam was it. And then, well, no, Sam moved to a different job. So now it's Jeff. And then, well, Jeff left the company. So now Stacy's taking over in the interim until we hire somebody else. And, oh, well, now we hired the replacement. So can you make it Tracy? And now all of a sudden I've had to go and change my flow 5 times. Well, instead, what I can do is I can build all that into custom metadata and say, here's basically what my record should look like with all of the default values. And then just create a record and attach it to the opportunity if this product is added to it with all of the most up-to-date information. So you don't need to clone it from an old one that still had Jeff on it from 3 SMEs ago. And you don't need to, clone it when I needed one of those SMEs to update with, yes, this is what we're contractually going to agree to. Well, we haven't gotten that from them on a new opportunity. And I don't let my sales manager fill out that field because he'll just put in there that we're going to do it at no cost, and that doesn't fly. So being able to create basically a record template that says, I need you to create this record every time with this starting information in it. And then you can take it through that validation process really was a game changer. And when you said, changing the person's name, that was a huge reason we did it that way. All right, well, I have at least one sticker taker.
Has anyone else had use cases for custom metadata type they want to share? If not, I'm sure you have thoughts now about it, right?
Oh, I'm sure everyone. I mean, what's great is it's the flexibility, almost the full flexibility of a custom object with the security of having it be metadata. So like I used it for a customer for an online form that they had where they wanted to pre-fill the form with a list of products that were variable depending upon something that the user selected in the form. And you have to store that someplace. So you either have to hard code it or you need to have that somewhere in their system, and custom metadata is perfect for that. Typical user doesn't need to see it, but you get to use it wherever you want.
One of the best use cases I've seen is Monica did that presentation. She's done it 100 times of building a custom metadata table that aligns either your businesses or your working groups or whatever to a series of checkboxes that define whether your validation rule flows or processes should be firing. So then what you can do is have a checkbox that you turn on and off to do certain data loads. And if you build it out early, you reference it in all of your code or all of your declarative code. And then you don't have to go in and turn things on and off just to do data loads or to validate stuff. Just switch them on and off. It's brilliant. And I think it's recorded. So if any of that made any sense, we can probably find it.
I think she did that on Automation Hour earlier this summer. So that would be on either our YouTube channel or on our past webinars page.
And Anna, it sounds like you used it for automating setting up users and their permission set assignments.
Yeah, we used it for the profile IDs since we have about 5 to 15 permission sets we assign to a user depending on their profile when they get set up. So all of that is now automated with the very grateful help of custom metadata types. So just don't have to do anything. And now we have a lot less to do when users are created.
So when you add them to like a profile, it automatically will add them to all these permissions. Is that right?
Yeah, our users come into the system from our SSO as chatter users. So when we switch their profile over, it'll automatically then update and assign the permission sets for their profile.
That's cool. I need to do something like that. Because right now we just manually set up users and it needs to stop.
It was very time consuming.
But worth it, because now, even though you spent all that time up front building that automation to make it work right, imagine the time that you're saving every time that you have new users. Like it ends up washing out, and then eventually you start, earning time back. It's like an investment.
Absolutely.
It's like when you put solar panels on your house, you're not going to see that money right away, but after 10 years or something, then maybe you will.
And then you get to replace the solar panels.
And then true, because technology probably changed enough that you want to. Anyway, that's awesome. I'm so excited to hear that some of you are already using this.
So
And
thank you, Michelle. And I guess we should ask Squire, since we have him here. Squire, what's on docket for Milwaukee next month?
We're going to do a quick overview of the release. I know most people, or I hope most people, are going to be attending the release readiness sessions with Admin Live and the individual focus, but we're going to try to hit the real big highlights almost the same week as those recordings and just make sure everyone's prepared. And I hope that everyone's already ready for the MFA cutover, but if not, we'll make sure we have some time to answer questions and help people with the panic of a post Feb 1 MFA situation. So we're going to do a little bit of both.
awesome.
And invites are going to go out this afternoon. I like to wait until you have yours so there's no confusion. So
Good. All right. Well, thanks again, everyone. I think that really concludes our session for today. So again, Michelle, spending time with us is awesome. We will definitely want to have you back in the future. I loved the troubleshooting of the error that was happening. I mean, that's real life right there. And that is our lives, I think, every day. And it's kind of nice to see that happens to even the most expert of experts with 18 certifications. So it's really, really great to see that troubleshooting happening.
If you stop using 50-digit IDs, it'd be fine.
It just
Right.
seems so
It's
natural.
Salesforce's fault, actually.
No.
It's not,
I mean, that
it's
was
not
some great
yours.
acting, Michelle. I mean, I know you scripted the whole thing. That was just so natural. It seemed like you almost did it by accident.
Right? I know. I'm going to be up for an Academy Award someday.
And good luck at Cactus Force.
Don't,
Thank you.
Watch out
All
for the
right.
thorns.
Fortunately, I'll be doing it right here from the comfort of my own little Salesforce office. So
Oh, that's nice.
Good plan.
yeah, it's the downside of COVID right now. I'm like, they're canceling security checkpoints. They're canceling flights. I'm like, maybe I'll just stay here.
All right. With that, thanks everyone. We'll see you next time.